There's always a delay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are talking to you about something serious tonight. We're talking to you about protecting Black women in workspaces. So this idea came to me when a superintendent in my area was basically indicted because she was a Latinx superintendent. It wasn't based off of her job performance or anything of that nature, but she was solely indicted because of her skin color. And so I thought it to be a brainchild for us to come together as kind of like a super group with my smart friends so that we could talk about just like Black women in workspaces and protecting Black women. So we're going to go around the horn and everybody's going to introduce themselves. We'll start with Dr. Smitty.
Can we let ladies go first, please, sir?
Oh, yes, sir. I'm sorry.
After the conversation we just had, really?
He's messy.
Right. Okay, so I am Shavella Wilson, and I have done a lot of work in culturally relevant teaching, critical race theory. I have done a lot of work in restorative practices. This topic is near and dear to my heart because I'm a Black woman. And I've worked in very toxic workplaces where I did not feel protected. So I think it's important to kind of talk about that and make sure we educate people on how to do it and why to do it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Smitty.
Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Vashawn Smith, principal Grandview Middle School in Grandview, Missouri. This work is important to me, and if you indulge me for a moment, because it's some people that I would be remiss if I didn't name, and I'm pretty sure we'll circle back throughout the show. But this show is important to me, first of all, because of my mom, who was a Black woman, my grandmother, who is truly why I sit here today, Mama Dickerson, Miss Watson, Dr. Perry, Miss Black, Mrs. Guest, Miss Hollingshed, Dr. Adams, the entire BK, who's going to be in the comments tonight. And most importantly, because of my mini-me, my daughter, Kayshawn Danielle Smith, who is a Black woman, fresh sophomore at Xavier University, who is going into the workforce. So it is definitely important to me that we start to have these conversations, these discussions. So that's why I'm here tonight, alongside the amazing Naomi Shelton.
So we'll pass it right to Naomi. Naomi, we're just doing introductions. So tell the folks who you are.
Naomi Shelton. Let's see. I am currently the director of community engagement for the KIPP Foundation. I also sit on the DC Public Charter School Board, and I'm a daughter and a friend, a sister and cousin and aunt, and all of those things. And I find it important to have this conversation. I think that the various levels of trauma that Black women face in the workplace is usually not, discussed that often. So I think this is an important conversation.
Yes, ma'am. All right, sir. Doctoral candidate.
Here we go.
David McGuire.
I'm in a good mood. I'm gonna let that ride. So David McGuire, principal at Tinley Summit Academy, Indianapolis, Indiana. I think this is important for me because I have a 1-year-old daughter, and so for me, this is the start of 21 years of trying to make sure that this doesn't continue to happen by the time my daughter Zuri Rain enters the workforce. And so I'm excited to be here. Definitely excited to engage, but learn a lot. But again, this is the start for me of what I want. Hopefully, the next 21 years to make sure this doesn't happen when she enters the workforce.
Yes, sir. All right. So if you're in the audience, let us know that you're in the audience. If you have questions, you have concerns, you have situations that you've experienced that you want us to engage upon or give you advice on or whatever, make sure you hit us up in the comments. But the format is we want to go about maybe 35 minutes and then Q&A for you guys to ask us questions so that we can help you build your capacity in terms of how we need to treat Black women in the workforce. And so we have questions. And so question number 1, and this is going to go to the panel. So everybody will answer individually and then the spotlight will be on you. Do Black women need protection in the workplace? Why or why not? Let's start simple. Who's jumping?
Yes. Right. Yes. I think we should like kind of define some terms, like what does protection mean first, and then define the type, right? Because we all know women, not just Black women, who are in workforces and in workplaces that are highly toxic. And I'm not sure that we're here to save them necessarily. You all might. But I think we need to kind of define who we're protecting, what that looks like, and why, right? So for me, if I am in a position of authority and I see people are talking about a certain woman of color because she doesn't dress right, because she doesn't have her hair right, or because certain things aren't together, I'm going to approach the crowd and say, well, which one of you have talked to her about what she needs to do to fit in here? And if nobody has, then I take it upon myself to kind of educate her on what's needed and what's expected in a non-punitive, non-threatening way. And I think there are other examples of protection that I'll let other people talk about.
All right. So we'll mix this up. McGuire, we'll come to you.
So I'm gonna take it just from an education space, right? But I think Doc was right about defining protection. But when you think about education, I can see Black women specifically being pigeonholed the same way they do Black males sometimes in education. So when I think about protecting Black women in the education space or a school setting, right, it's how do we make sure that the opportunities are presented to them is based on their merit, right, and not because they're a woman. But also, I'm even go deeper. If you even talk about single Black women in a school setting, right, as a male principal, right, I have an obligation to make sure that the workspace is protection as far as make sure they don't feel harassed, right, whether it's by colleagues or students, right? If you're in a high school and you're a younger Black woman, right? So protection it goes in all those forms, but I think in education, right, is how do you make sure you protect them from the standpoint of them as a woman and also from them as a professional.
Nice, Ms. Shelton.
So I think protection covers all that you named, David. But in traditional workspaces, there's the issue, or there are issues around promotions. There are issues around just the basic like social interaction that you have in the workplace that are often not considered, but those often have substantial consequences when it comes to Black women. You can find in some corporate spaces where Black women will avoid going to happy hours because they don't want to have to play the representative for people of color, specifically for Black people, but that can end up harming them when it comes time for promotions or during their reviews, where those things are, used as dings against them in that professional work setting. And so that protection being the social norms that are held for other people are not the same for Black women in some spaces. There are often times where we're often told to smile, wear more makeup, do particular things, and very, microaggressions that, in general terms, you would think, oh, that's not that big of a deal. But in, death by 1,000 cuts, what does that really mean? And what does that really look like? And so I think part of that is like having equity in being able to objectively review what a Black woman does in her work. And more than likely, she is working harder than some of your other colleagues, or she has checked out, but that is because of those microaggressions. And so that protection being, how do you level the playing field as we talk about DEI, as that conversation starts to continue to that continues to move forward, what does that really mean? And that can be from hair, from clothing, all of those things. But having very honest conversations about the people who are in authority and in power, really recognizing and checking their biases.
Yes. Dr. Smith.
So first thing, right, you ain't gonna have me go after Naomi no more, because I want to at least try to sound a little bit intellectual. And after going after her, I'm not. So real quick. So when I got the invitation to be, part of this panel, I reached out to the Black women in my circles and kind of just got their thoughts about things. And the message that kept coming across was really not about protection, but how do we help them change the narrative about who they are in the workplace? How do we help them understand that they don't have to conform to white women norms in order to advance in their careers and things like that? So everything everybody said is correct with the protection piece, but a lot of the information or a lot of the conversations I had with the people in my circle was around what can we do to kind of help change the narrative for them so that their passion and knowledge is not seen as aggression and anger. So how do you change that conversation so that they aren't pigeonholed, like David said, because of who they are and what they represent? Just even something as simple as, I can't wear my natural hair in certain workspaces or whatever, and the stigma that comes along with that. So just being able to help them kind of change and transform the conversation that is around them and kind of what they stand for, especially when it comes to the passion that they bring, and that nurturing experience that we know all Black women bring to the table, and how we use that to elevate them and not hold them down in the process.
So Dr. Smith, we're gonna stay right on you, and I'm gonna pose this question to you.
Because I have a question too.
Okay. All right. So, Dr. Shavella, please. I don't want to. I know she's a witness protection program, and I'm trying to.
I told you
make sure I don't say double names and whatnot. Dr.
I gave it up front. Right. I said in my introduction my first and last name, right?
Okay, all right. Dr.
So I don't know. I don't remember your name, but so Smith. My question to that is
can you put our names back up for?
I will definitely do that. All right.
Right. So first, the natural hair, and I've been wearing natural hair since my son was about 3 and he just turned 15, and that has never been an issue anywhere I've worked, and I've worked in rural white spaces, and my friends who are in corporate America who have natural hair, and some work for the federal government, that has never really been an issue, blatantly an issue for the people that I know and the people in my circle. And I'm not saying that it's not, but that kind of links into, you said we have to change the narrative about how we are, or like how we're presented. And like right when all of this happened to George Floyd and everybody just suddenly became really interested and excited about DEI work, I had a very long conversation with my now supervisor, and I was like, I don't feel like that work is on me, right? I can't change the heart of a racist. So like if somebody wants to come into this workspace and call me a pickaninny or whatever they think because I have natural hair, that work is not on me, right? That work is on them to change, because I feel like it's even oppressive to think that the person who is being oppressed has to then take up this mantle to teach you, the oppressor, why we are not or should not be oppressed, right? So I feel like they should do some of the work and come to the table to us and ask us, how do you want to be viewed in this space? Because this is what I heard, but this is what I see. Bless you. So I just want to kind of put that out there, because we keep taking on more work, right? And it's not our job. Like, that is totally not my job to make you feel comfortable with me and how I was born, right?
So what's your question?
So can I well, I know what the question. Can I run it back? And I know what the question is. So basically, when I say the we, I'm not talking about Black women when I say that. What I'm saying is, and it's kind of one of the things that I've kind of been harping on, is that a lot of people talk about, having a mentor and having mentorship, where I feel like we need to move past mentorship and talk about sponsorship, because there are going to be spaces that I'll be able to be in as a Black man that Black women may not be able to be in. So how do I have that conversation in those spaces where they can't get into, so that when those people in those spaces go back and work with Black women or deal with Black women, they have a different perception or different mindset? So I'm not saying that you pick up that cross and walk into those spaces. I'm saying when we as Black men get a chance to be in certain spaces that you can't get into, what is our conversation to fix some of those stereotypes or address some of those stereotypes, and not just letting things go by the wayside? Like, I'm a big fan of what you permit is what you promote. So if I permit those conversations to continue to happen and don't address them, then it's going to continue to be promoted in the workspace. Like, I am one of 2 Black principals in my district. So there's conversations that we'll be having in principals meetings about my Black teachers, in which 50% of my teachers are Black, and only two of them are Black males. So when those conversations come up about Black teachers, how am I addressing those concerns?
Right.
How am I ensuring that their voice is brought into those spaces that they can't get into? So that's what I'm talking about as far as changing that narrative.
So you are a protector. Thank you.
So,
all right. So switching up, McGuire. I'm trying to call him Dr. McGuire.
ABD.
Hey, man, listen. I can't kill my joy, man. I'm in a good mood. Everything's great.
Can I just say, Ray, is this supposed to be dismantled? But I'm not. I'm gonna leave you alone. I'll leave you alone, Ray.
Right. This is simple. It's just like disinformation. Like, what is that?
Naomi, it could be whatever you want it to be.
Cut it out.
So
that little pep talk about professionalism.
Oh my God, they missed that one.
David, continue.
Yo. All right, so Dr. McGuire, how do we dismantle the notion that Black women are always angry?
See, Doc Locks made me think, like, is that our job? To just, it got me thinking that I had an answer when it first came up, and then she dropped her piece, and I'm thinking, like, go ahead, Doc, because
okay, so I think this question kind of changes the narrative on that, right?
Okay.
I think the way we've been portrayed in media for so long, like if you look at movies, Losing Isaiah, just any movie that you can think of, even Florida Evans stays angry. Like on every episode, there's not a whole episode where she's happy or overjoyed or something, but there's always a depiction. Even Tyler Perry always has the outrageously loud, angry, bitter Black woman, right? And everybody has to do all this work to get her back together again. So I think some of that is on us because, like, in another seminar, I talked about poverty, right? And how single mothers or single parents in poverty, they don't have a lot to smile about. So it's a conscious effort for them to smile. It's a conscious effort for them to be friendly and to be personable because of some of the things that they are encountering. And they're always thinking about what they have to do next, right? I have to work. I have to go home. I have to find something to eat. I have to cook something to eat. I have to help my son with his homework, all of those things. So we can appear a bit disgruntled. I'll own some of that. But to your point, go ahead.
So I'll say this. I'll say, how do we dismantle? And I'm gonna just go from the perspective of David McGuire, the Black male. I have to make sure that I don't play into the notion that a passionate, loud voice Black woman is angry, right? That's the only thing I can do in my space, right? To make sure that I don't play into that. I can't control what everybody else does. But when I think about this question, it makes me think about the way the media portrayed the difference between Michelle Obama when she gives a speech or the ways when Sarah Palin gave a speech, right? Michelle Obama uses her hands, raises her voice. She's angry about something when she's passionate. Sarah Palin does it the same way, right? There's that passion, right? She's fiery, she's pro-American, but Michelle Obama's angry, right? And so the only thing I can do, me personally, is not to play into that notion, but this almost is a trap. I'm a defer to the Black queens on the panel.
Yes, sir.
So
they jump in.
So I think that there are tropes that, unfortunately, like Doc said, that the media has been able to push. You have the angry Black woman, you have the Jezebel, and there's another. But when it comes to right, and the idea of Black women being portrayed or seen as, or their passion being read as anger, is because we don't have a wide variety of definitions of what our emotions actually are. So my very first job out of college, I worked for a PR firm, not only a PR firm, but what turned into a crisis PR firm. I was the only Black person in that space. I had just left my HBCU, Tougaloo College in Tougaloo, Mississippi, and being able to have conversations with people about what my life looked like was fine up until 9/11, right? So now I am stressed. Now I am angry. Now I am frustrated. And those things, coupled with having to explain to, 3 white women and an Indian woman that asked me questions about why do you all have Essence magazine, and me looking at them like, well, why do y'all have Vogue, this, that, and the other? But then I become angry and defensive. The idea of like, there have been very few examples of that full swath of Black women and our emotions, where we've seen how many different definitions and examples of white women, right? We don't grow up coddled in the same way that they do. So of course, how we show up is going to look and feel different. How do you dismantle that? Continue to have examples and have those interactions, right? You have the interactions, and when people push and say you're angry, just say, no, actually, I am passionate about this. I am angry about whatever it is, but how is this any different than when Joe has an outburst? What is that? How is that different? Where, like, calling out the double standards that show up. And I think being able to give those examples of, yes, I am stressed. We all are. And my passion for this runs a lot deeper than yours because of X, Y, and Z, whatever the industry is, whatever, we work in education now. And I tell people all the time, I'm going to be angry when I see that you are, you're dismissive of Black parents, and you're calling Black children, you're doing things that are less equitable to Black children. Yes, I am angry about that. Does that make me an angry Black woman? No, that makes me a frustrated constituent, a frustrated citizen, a frustrated person. But thinking about it in that way and reframing for people, how is that any different than when y'all are mad about the fact that you can't, you have to wear a mask in a store? That's angry.
Yeah. Dr. Smith, I'm sorry, Steph Curry.
Now, see, I asked you not to.
He did ask you not to,
but we gonna roll this.
You'll be fine. You got this, Doc.
So basically, I'm gonna try to sidestep this trap question and give you a little bit. So I'm gonna approach it from like David did, from an educational standpoint, and the spaces that I can control and that I maneuver in. And as I said in the pre-show, tomorrow we're gonna go into our social justice workshop with my staff. And the whole premise behind that, the foundation that is built on is on read, learn, discuss, and act. And I feel like this kind of follows that same mindset when we're talking about how do we dismantle this angry Black woman montage, is that how do we educate people, have open and honest discussion to change mindsets, and then we address and act when people have misconceptions. We don't allow things just to go by the wayside. We don't allow side comments just to happen, things like that. We constantly have to educate them on that and then help them understand. And there's a TED Talk, you probably have seen it. If you haven't, you should go see it. It's called The Danger of a Single Story. Mm-hmm. So when the people in your space, the only thing they know is love and hip hop or Real Housewives of Atlanta. That's the only time they interact with a Black woman. Any inkling of that when they see a Black woman is automatically going to jog that in their memory. So how do you help them understand that just because that's me 5%, I'm of the belief that we all got some piece of ratchetness in us, but that's not what defines me. Like that might be me at the happy hour on Friday or, at the regionals or conclave or whatever. But at the end of the day, when I walk in this building, I'm Dr. Smith. So how do you help them understand that same concept with Black women? Is that just because you saw a 5-minute interaction with this woman, that doesn't define the 40 years of her life. So I think those conversations, and like I said, once again, forcing those conversations on people who don't want to have them and pushing people into uncomfortable spaces is what's going to help dismantle that angry Black woman mindset.
Yeah. All right. So next question is going to be, where are we here? That was the last question. That was all right. So yeah, what are some examples of how Black women are hyper scrutinized in the workspace? And we'll start with the Black women. Doc.
Really? So I've worked in a lot of spaces, and one that immediately comes to mind is that I had on the same dress as another woman in the office. And all day she was told that she was cute, but at lunch they told me to go home and change because it was too revealing. I have been approached by a lot of, and these are women, supervisors who have said that it was a little too revealing. Most people who know me know I don't wear tight clothes. I'm usually pretty conservative in my dress at work. So that's an example. I have been told that I can't write. and put my work up against, I think she had like a high school diploma, maybe in school, working on a degree. And I've written a whole book and been professionally published, right?
You better tell them.
Right. Little things. I just think it's all the microaggressions. Sitting at the table and actually having an idea and pitching it, and then the person across the room was like, "Oh yeah, this is a good idea," and says the exact same thing that I just said. Being called into the office and telling me that I am angry and antisocial because I don't giggle at their jokes. Well, they're not funny. And those are just some of my personal examples.
Nice.
Mhm.
Schultz.
So I think I can echo some of those same, critiques, faux critiques. I would add to that, the idea of, oh, you don't smile, or you don't come across as pleasant,
Friendly, right?
right? And I'm like, okay, I came in here to work, not to be friends with y'all. I think there's a host of things I could run through that I've had happen personally, but just in general, we know that Black women are often seen, or not even seen, not heard or seen. So one of the things that I've recognized in terms of not just scrutiny, but just ways that those microaggressions show up, calling out people who worked on a project, but not the one person who did the most significant lift in the work, who happens to be a junior Black woman, or those little things where the work is happening, where the Black women are the ones making it happen, but they are not the ones recognized, like in front of other colleagues, in company-wide emails, and all those other ways. And so, of course, the microaggressions about your hair, what you're wearing, how friendly you are, those show up, but also the ways that you're minimized and kind of pushed to the side, those things show up as well. And while it's not scrutiny, it is still something that diminishes your ability to show up as your whole self.
Nice. All right, fellas, jump in here. What kind of things have you seen as Black men?
I said, you just trying to see these dynamics between me and Naomi play out all night. That's what you're trying to do. That's what you're trying to do. That's what you're trying to do.
Two times, don't do it.
Let me tell you what I have done for you. I have played the role of Irvin Magic Johnson. Change my name right now, Irvin Magic Johnson.
Oh God!
All right, so
honestly, I really don't have much to add to what they said. I mean, they kind of hit everything on the head. And
can I just ask, what do people say when we're not around? What do you hear men or other women, like white women or other Black women? What do you hear them say about scrutinized Black women when we're not in the room?
So I've heard, like I said, in rooms, and one of the things that just comes recently to memory, I had a teacher who pitched an idea for some PD that we could do in-house instead of, shelling out $5,000-$10,000 to an outside agency to do it. And it was kind of like, oh, yeah, that might be a good idea. And I mean, it was like flawless. The plan was, on point. And they ended up not going with the plan and, brought in this outside agency and didn't do 25% of what was in her plan. And I'm like, so we decided to, but then in another situation, I seen, a white woman pitch an idea that wasn't as detailed, that wasn't as good, and then this time we did have an outside organization or company that wanted to come in and kind of do the PD for us. And they were like, no, we're going to go with the inside thing. And it was a flop. So, I mean, that's just one recent example that has happened in the last 2 months, so I hear when you say like Black women aren't heard or their voice doesn't carry the same weight as it does in other places. So just real quick before Dave jump in, I think once again, as a Black man who is in those spaces, what am I doing to continue to push that? So like when that situation happened with the PD that flopped from the outside company, which wasn't, so when we had went back and had the review conversation about it, I brought it up like, hey, we paid them $10,000 to come in and do this, but yet we had this person over here trying to do it, which was way better, way planned out and all that. Why was that? Why couldn't we have went that route or whatever? So when those things do come up, like taking them back to, like, look, this is a decision you made. And I have a, real transparent, like myself, I have a lot of conversations within myself and with my Black staff is, are we being denied this opportunity because it's not a good opportunity, or are we being denied this opportunity because we're Black? If I was a white man, would I be getting the green light? Or if this was a white woman offering this, would they be getting the green light, unlike because it was a Black person? So, I mean, and that's just an internal struggle battle that, we have as Black people in general.
Yeah. McGuire.
Yeah, so I taught in a high school that was a hot mess. It was ran by a charter management company that wasn't even based in the city. But anyway, so just the way they ran the organization was terrible. And so some teachers, a group of us, came together to try to advocate, not for our kids and for better, for the school to be better. And we rallied some students, right? And the teachers got the students to do a silent protest where they just went in the hallways and sat against their lockers, right? And obviously the company was upset, but it was ran by 3 teachers, 2 Black women and a white woman. And who do you think got in trouble? The 2 Black women, because they incited a riot, right? Because the kids listened to them. But again, they listened to all of them, but they were the Black women, right? And I remember that vividly. And I was going to use an example from Doc because the same teacher, I watched her be sent home by the principal for wearing a skirt the same length as another woman, white woman in the school. And I watched that. And at the time, I'm 22, right? And I'm thinking myself like, damn. And she said, they sending me home. I said, for what? She said, my skirt. And I said, what about homegirl skirt? And she said, she just shrugged her shoulders. And so fortunate for me as a principal, I've never had another teacher come to me complain about somebody's skirt. But it's things like that. But I think the clothes, what I've seen in my experience, clothes is where Black women get hyper scrutinized in the workplace, and especially in education, right? Especially when you talk about, the kindergarten teacher that can't wear a skirt because she's supposed to sit on the carpet with her kids, right? It's things like that I've seen a lot in education.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Thanks for sharing. So we're gonna start back. I'll listen to the directions. Sir, we're gonna start with you.
Let's see where it goes next.
Right.
Behind the back pass.
Yeah, hey, listen, I'm all about creating energy. You know what I'm saying? And so, that's what we're here for. All right. So if you witness a Black woman being mistreated in the workplace, what's the best way to support?
For me, in my position, to call it out. Like I said, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm the HNIC around this building. So if I see it happening, we're gonna have that conversation.
So what does the conversation look like though? Like when it happens?
So I guess you got to give me an example of how she's being mistreated, what the mistreatment is. But once again, I believe in praising people in public and correcting in private. So if a woman is being mistreated, say like, for example, there's a verbal altercation between a Black teacher and a Black woman and another teacher, white, whatever. Like, we're going to have that conversation. Hey, I need you to come meet with me in my office, and we're going to have that conversation. Like, at the end of the day, we are here to model behaviors for students. So do you believe that conversation that you just had was the correct representation of yourself and the message we're trying to send to our students when they walk around this building? So I feel like that's the conversation we're going to have. Like, I'm ain't like I'm going to just, grab them by the collar in the middle of the hallway, because that's only going to, add to the situation, even though some of us be having them moments, but we definitely going to have that conversation. Because like I said, what you permit is what you promote. So if I don't have that conversation, it's only going to get worse for that woman, because now everybody thinks, oh, we can just go talk like that to any Black woman or any Black teacher around this building. And it's just going to roll like that. So I think you're going to have that conversation. And with and I'm not the kind of person, I don't believe in blanket emails. I don't believe in blanket announcements at staff meetings. Like, no, we're going to have this one-on-one conversation because you are the one that crossed the line. And I feel like when you do blanket statements, like
you wanted to say you the one. It's fine.
He said it. He
Right. And he corrected himself. You the one that did it. That's
you
fine.
did it.
Just do it.
So, all right, so we're gonna.
Hey, hold on, real quick.
Yeah.
Just real quick. I'm gonna be done with. You see how she had my back though? Go ahead, y'all. Y'all go ahead.
Hey, and see how she coming right behind you. With that energy right there. All right.
All right. So I think it is a thing of calling it out, right? And I think it is about like having that one-on-one instead of the blanket. Let me say something to everyone. Let's all be respectful and live within these norms. Like, no, you have to be able to call a thing, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you can't, we have tiptoed around all of these things that have resulted in our mistreatment, our mishandling, how we are presented to the rest of the world. And so until we are able to like call it out directly, there's no other way to handle it. So saying, why, calling it out when it comes to clothing. Well, why, if she's wearing the same outfit that someone else is, why is it that her outfit is a problem? Or why is it that you have an issue with her natural hair being worn, which I have had extreme examples of either myself or someone else having a challenge around hair or wearing head wraps. But saying like, why is that an issue when that her natural hair is like how it grows out of her head, right? Or wearing braids or locks. Why is that such an issue? I know my mother has had the issue of when she grew out her locks, people would ask her where she bought weed, like those types of things, and like being able to say directly, no, literally. And she has always worked in a very professional environment, and this was brought up at work. So, calling those things out and not having that burden on the Black woman to like constantly have to correct, because then she turns into a combination of the strong Black woman and the angry Black woman, and nobody wants to have to do that.
Yeah. And real quick, I just add in real quick before Doc goes. Sorry.
No. I need you to be able to do this.
I just want to add, because she talked about that blanket statement piece. Yeah. And this is, whoever's listening, like this is the issue with blanket statements. When you send a blanket statement to your staff, the people that are doing the right thing are offended. Like, I'm already doing the right thing. Why are you talking to me? And then the people that's doing the wrong thing, they're thinking, well, shit, look, I ain't the only one. So why is it a problem? So that's why that's why one-on-one conversations need to happen.
Or they don't even realize they did anything. Like that's the other thing. It's like even if you receive the email and you're like, oh, somebody did something to somebody, damn, that sucks. And you keep it moving because you don't even know that your behavior was inappropriate. So unless it's called out very specifically, people are able to breeze through it.
Yeah. Doc, going to you.
So I have a different approach, because sometimes the call out person is then punished, right? So if you're not the HNIC, then I think you be very careful in how you call out. And while I don't think I do the blanket emails, I do an email. I have the conversation sometimes right there and in private, but then I follow up with the staff to say, look, this is what happened. Some of you saw it, some of you did not, and this is why it is not tolerated, right, in this space, because we are aiming to be professional and accepting and affirming. I think we get into, oh yeah, I'm gonna call it out, but the call out sometimes has very negative ramifications. So we all need to be working, particularly now in 2020. And we're not in a space where we are the policymaker or we are the person that hires and fires. You really have to monitor your tone and approach when you do the call out and how you do the call out, right? I would tell people who work in corporate environments that when they see this, to not confront it like head on, but to go to HR and file a complaint. Not that it happened to you, but you saw this happen, right? Because then there has to be a process, and there's supposed to be a process that is followed. Because if I'm in corporate America, where there's not really a lot of Black people in this space anyway, and I go up to Bob and I'm like, dude, I don't think that was really professional or kind or whatever, then Bob is offended. Or if I'm in an education setting and I go talk to Cindy about what she said, then Cindy's going to start crying, right? Because that's what they do. And then Cindy's going to get upset and she's got to go home for the day. And while she's home, she's writing the superintendent telling about how you mistreated her on something she didn't even know she did. And it was unintentional. And that's not how she is. And people have a long history of believing the person that gets to them first, right? So if we attack it head on in all of the situations, sometimes we make another situation or we make it worse. So I would just say be very, very aware of your work environment and your policies and procedures.
Yeah. Dave, coming to you.
Damn. So everyone gave very...
They did.
Listen, because here's the problem. Here's my problem, and I'm gonna put it in education because I've had two job titles my entire life: teacher and principal. Fortunate for me, what would I do? I'm in a place of privilege, right? In my space of education. So I'm gonna do the same thing that a white man would do for a white woman. I'm gonna say something, right? And it won't be politically correct because I think, Ray, you posted yesterday, right? We gotta protect Black women at all costs. And so if I witness the mistreatment of a Black woman, and maybe it's youthful ignorance, but I'm gonna say something, it's not gonna be HR, especially if it's mistreatment to what we talked about, especially in this space. I'm gonna send Black women home because of the skirt and let white women stay here. No. I'm gonna say something about that, and everyone needs to know, right, that they got on the same outfit. So if she goes home, she goes home, right? Because if not, then what am I doing, right? If I sit there and witness it, because you can go to HR and those things could get swept underneath the rug because that's kind of how those things happen. But sometimes it's when you call things out loudly, it's when you get people's attention, right? It's the same thing that's happening in our society, right? We tried peaceful marching and people didn't really listen. So let's knock out a couple windows, right? Burn a trash can. Now you listening. So for me, I guess now, in this space that I'm in, because again, I'm fortunate to have a space of privilege, I'm gonna speak up in my space. And so Doc said, I'm the HNIC, but my building, but I'm gonna say something because I want the same happen to me. And I think about what would I want somebody to do if my Black daughter or my Black sister, right, is being mistreated. I would want somebody, a Black man who saw that to stand in that gap for them.
Yeah. That's what's up. All right, I know I'm the moderator, but I'm gonna jump in on this piece because it means something to me. And so when I put out the tweet yesterday that you have to protect Black women at all costs, I truly feel like as Black men and as Black men that are HNICs in positions in education, like you got to be willing to lose your job in order to protect Black women. That's the only way that this true protection is going to happen, especially for those of us that are trying to set examples that have Black daughters like we have, whatever, right? Because the same passion and the same energy that we would want someone to protect our child is the same way that we should be protecting these Black women in the world. I'm jumping out.
Can I just piggyback off of that and say, even if you don't have a daughter, right? Even if you like all those things, yes, those qualifiers matter, yes. But it should be my fellow Black woman, right? That you should protect us at all costs, regardless of all of those things, because there are Black women who don't have sons who march in the street for Black men. You have Black women who stand in the gap for Black men all the time, whether or not their fathers were around or not. I mean, so what does that mean to have to do? And no shade to anyone who like qualifies it that way, but there are men who will absolve themselves of doing that because they don't have proximity to a woman. Like they don't have anybody in their lives that they care enough about in that way that they would do that. So how do we think about it in a way of like, this is someone who is my equal, my partner in how we move the needle of whatever it is, the work that we're doing, and that I should stand in the gap for her because I am a man.
Yeah.
The way that she would that because I'm a man, she will stand in the gap for me.
Ray, can I ask you a question?
Whoa.
Go ahead. Yeah.
You know how like she like to come for people and then don't nobody really come back.
Don't do it, Ray.
Yeah,
don't do it, Ray. Don't do it.
No, because even if you qualify, like it still goes out in the stratosphere, like you know what I'm saying. So like I just want to clarify. I don't just mean because I have a Black daughter. That only
David said it first. So who's next? For?
So that only adds to my passion in terms of like why I'm willing to put myself on the line, why I'm willing to put my career on the line to protect Black women. That only magnifies it. So. Yeah,
just tread lightly, Ray. I don't want to have to protect the Black woman on this panel.
That's why I
got a question
out there. I knew where that was going. I don't want your energy, and I don't want her come. You know, I understand. I see what's happening here.
I'm too tired today.
I got a question.
Don't worry, I got you.
Yeah.
So, and this is to the Black queens on the panel. So when Ray asked the question, and I jumped into my piece about standing in the gap and protecting, right? At a point, do you ever feel like I don't need a man, or does it come off as like if that's happening, would you have an issue with a Black man jumping in there? Like I don't need your saving. I'm just asking a question because
I don't know.
Let me tell you.
You can go first.
Okay, let me tell you something. Like
that goes back to this.
Yeah,
okay.
that's
So in my current position, I keep having technology issues, so I have to keep going back to work, right? And there was a man who was very rude to me, and a Black man who has never seen me before in his life said, when I got my computer back, he was like, "Well, is it resolved?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, come here." And he spent 45 minutes with me trying to resolve the issue. When I tell you I love that man, I don't know his name. I might not ever see him again. But I went home and I called a friend of mine and my boss, and I was like, "I don't know who this man is. Roll the camera back, but we need to call somebody because I was protected, right?" And I felt like he came to my rescue, even though we didn't resolve anything. It was the effort, he put forth an effort. So no, I think if it becomes a point of, kind of showing off to get a number or, expecting something afterwards, then yeah, move on, sir. I got this. But I have never, and I was thinking about that today because I was part of another conversation. I've never said I don't need a man. Okay.
Right.
You won't ever say it.
Hey, jump in there.
And so, I think you saw my reaction,
Smith,
right?
You see how I set this up?
Yeah, man. So, right, I'm too tired. I'm sleepy. I mean,
Okay. I'm sleepy too.
Right? Like, so the thing is that that's another trope, right? There are women who believe that because they have experienced some type of trauma and they have issues when it comes to relating to and engaging with men in that way. I would say if that is the case for some women, that is some women. But I know for myself and what Doc just said, like, no, if a man is going to do that work so I can relieve myself of that burden, please, by all means. And I can count on one hand the number of times that Black men have stood up for me in the workplace. One, because I may not have needed it, but when they do, right? And it's always appreciated. It's always something that I'm willing to call out and to thank them for. My former boss, worked with him for 6.5 years. And if y'all think that I come for y'all's next, well, then he can absolutely tell you that I've done that on more than one occasion for him, either taking one of my ideas or saying something sideways, not sideways in a sexual harassment way, but just saying something. But at the end of the day, I've watched and seen him stand up for me. I've known that he has done that behind closed doors in terms of like making sure that he recognizes where I was coming from in a situation and where the disconnect happened. So no, to answer the question, no, I don't know anyone personally who would be like, nah, I don't need your help.
Right.
I personally would never say, I don't want a man to help me in that way.
Yo, so David, we got a comment here, right? And I feel like this is something that we need to touch on. It says HR is here to protect policy, not us. Period. White women don't care for us. So I leaving the second part out, let's touch on the first part, because we all got professional careers that we're trying to save and not put them on the line if we don't have to. HR is there to protect policy. What are your thoughts?
That's true.
Yeah, I was. it is true.
I used to work in HR. That's true.
And go ahead, Doc. Yep.
But they're also there to resolve and respond to disputes, right?
Quietly.
So what people don't understand is HR does not generate any money. So everybody who works at HR is like working at the will of whomever. Okay, so if you get in academia, we work at the will of the president. So the president walk in one day, be like, "We don't need y'all. Okay, bye," and we get 30-day pay. But HR has several functions, and that's benefits, okay, compensation, right, and then the EEOC piece of it, because that is a federal guideline. And if they get caught too many times outside of that federal practice, then they lose money and other things that they might need. So while they aren't there necessarily to protect people, there are certain things that they have to do.
Yeah. Nay, you look like you want to jump in.
No, I didn't have anything.
Dave.
I mean, yes, go ahead.
Go ahead, Naomi. Go ahead.
No, just to say that to reiterate that, right? So unless you're working in a workplace where they are thinking about the people as human capital and people who are actually, I think I can't even think of what we call our HR department, talent, right?
Talent.
So they're thinking about that, but they're like, I have heard personally stories of Black women who, regardless of the race of the representative from HR, that person gave them the feedback of, it's okay, you just continue to behave in a way that is palatable to white people. And so, no, I don't think that HR is they're in the best interest of the organization they are there to represent, not focused on, unless they are thinking about DEI work. They are not thinking about how to support people in the most effective ways.
Yeah. And what I believe Cynthia was saying was when they protect the policies, especially when it comes to EEOC complaints, to Naomi's point, if it is a Black woman, let's use a Black woman because that's the topic. If a Black woman does make that complaint, the last thing they want is it to get out and go far. So they will try to stand on the policy because they want to make sure that doesn't get out, because that will be something that gives the company a black eye. And their job, in addition to benefits and compensation, is also to make sure that the organization doesn't have a black eye, especially when you talk about schools. And Ray, you probably can speak better than me as we move up and you deal with HRs, right? From that standpoint, when it comes to schools and education, they definitely don't want anything creeping out when it comes to race, especially in this time, right? And so it is there to protect policy, because you definitely don't want to have that happening right now,
Not at all. No, I mean it looks a lot different than it did. It looks a lot different than it did 4 years ago. Let's say
yes.
Because like a lot of, and we can also do another panel about the differences between subtle and overt racism, because that's kind of the things that you're going to see manifest in our society henceforth. But I want to let everybody know that's in the panel. That's in the audience. Thank you guys for coming and rocking with us. If you could share this, that would be great. But we're about to jump into final thoughts.
I guess I don't get to ask the HR question. I don't get to ask the HR question.
I'm sorry.
Dr. Smith.
Yeah.
You know what?
Thank you.
Another show we gotta do.
Hey, there's a lot of you know what?
Yeah, like I don't get to answer.
You know what? I'm gonna have to follow you.
I'm
gonna make this short and sweet.
Wait.
Yeah.
Fix your camera angle so we can see all 5 of them degrees in the back.
Ooh, right. There you go. It was all a dream.
Why are y'all like this?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We're gonna talk after the podcast, okay?
Shout out to the great one, the Notorious B.I.G.
Yeah.
So really, real quick. So with the policy thing, because they talked about the protection of policy, my question with that would be, though, if a Black woman made that complaint, is that policy going to be interpreted the same way if it was a white woman that made that complaint?
Right.
Because policies are put in place, but how you interpret them is what makes the difference.
Right.
Just like with laws. So that's the only thing I'm gonna put out there, because you didn't really want me to answer anyway. So there you go.
That's not how that was.
My God.
I see what you're doing here.
I can't even ride with you, Doc, man. I saw that, man. I can't even.
Wow. So we're gonna go into final thoughts, and we're gonna do reverse order, because I know somebody
gonna lead us
go
like this for the rest of the show.
So we'll let you go first. Go ahead.
I'm gonna go first. Final thoughts. Man, you caught me off guard with that one. So my final thoughts is, and somebody kind of put it in the comments, is that the least protected group of people in America is the Black woman, hands down. So I feel like as Black men, we got to step up our game, because I feel like, and reciprocate back, because at a moment's notice, a woman will drop whatever she's doing to protect the Black man, no matter if it's her son or her husband. It could be somebody right off the street. So how do we reciprocate that back as Black men, so we can make sure we are protecting the Black women that we supposed to hold near and dear to our hearts, no matter if that's my sister, my mom, or anybody else? We need to give that same kind of love back to them that they have given us for centuries and centuries and centuries. And then the last thing is, I appreciate you, Uncle Ray, for just blessing me to share the space with the future Senator Shelton. I'm out.
Yeah, absolutely. And yo, right there. Hey, you see how I do this? Right here. Final thoughts.
What? I mean,
is your mother watching the show?
What is happening right now?
Your mother
no,
watching
she's not.
Dukes?
My mother.
If your mother's watching,
you're getting hooked up now.
I think that's what's happening.
So,
okay.
Mama Shelton, meet Dr. Smith. Dr. Smith, meet Mama Shelton.
Ray, man, you got a lot of talents, dog. You got a lot of talents, man.
Can I give my final thoughts?
Go ahead.
When we go to the post show, we can have a whole conversation about this. My God.
It was nice to meet you.
Right. So I wish I was like at full capacity. I am not, and I will be honest and say that. Y'all are hilarious. That's all. Okay. So one, the idea of we recognize that, especially with women, it happens with Black men too, but with women, there is a cycle of trauma that happens when they enter an organization. You know, they have white leadership, so there's this honeymoon phase, then there's the reality of what's going on. The woman gives some information that's like, hey, just so y'all know that these list of issues exist. And then it turns into like, oh, well, maybe this is a problem, but you know, these are the things that we've seen you do, but not paying attention to the things that are like embedded within the organization. And then what ends up happening, she's retaliated against and she ends up leaving. So how do you stop that cycle of more people being ready and standing in line to be able to check for that bias, to ask why that woman is being pushed up against and pushed back on, to think about like what are the ways that we can give honest feedback, especially as a white peer, right? If you're a man or a woman, what are the ways that you can show up for your Black female and male peers and say, no, these are things that are actually happening. I agree. So standing in that gap, like you don't have to just be a Black man to stand in the gap. I have a white woman that stands in the gap for me all the time at work. She also, you know, is not a typical white woman. And then giving credit where credit is due, like show up for Black women in a way where you are honoring and like acknowledging the things that she does do that are seen and unseen, so that people can keep that top of mind versus always the critiques or the criticisms. And, you know, being thoughtful in how you celebrate Black women in the workplace.
Cool. All right, Doc.
Me?
Yes.
Okay. My son just walked down here.
What's up, Malcolm? What's up, big dog?
So, okay, you don't know us, right? But we don't use his name on social media at all. Is the boy. So I would tell you, or my final thoughts are that we all have to challenge microaggressions. We all have to be a part of the work that makes things better. And if we are in white workspaces, we need to find ways to ask them or to promote opening their workspace to networking for Black women. So can they have like a Black Women's Council where Black women can go and kind of vent and then plan certain activities that are non-threatening, you know, and just because kind of dispel the myth that just because 3 Black women are together, that they're planning something or they're up to something nefarious.
Right.
That's it.
All right.
I'm gonna take this time to celebrate the Black women who've done something, who's in my life. So first of all, my mother, who every good quality I have comes from her. And the reason I'm here is because of her. So I love my mother. So thank you, Mom. I want to shout out Dr. Lugene Bailey, who told me at 18 that I should be a teacher. And she introduced me to Black literature. And the reason I became a teacher and an English teacher and an alpha. Shout out to the bros. Thought I'd throw that in there.
The bros, bro. Y'all are the bros.
No. We can be whatever we want to be because we were first.
You are
and
not the bros.
You know what? We're not doing this anyway. This is my final thought. This is my final thought. This is my final thought.
Stop it.
This is my final thought.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
You started wrong. You ended wrong.
Going into a Black women's now.
This is my final thought.
Go ahead.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
I need to go get back.
I'm almost done. And so anyway, okay, I became an alpha, the bros.
Yes, thank you.
There you go.
Brothers.
The brothers.
You let it punk you.
No. I have the power. I gave them what they wanted. They can have it. Anyway, and last but not least, this beautiful angel right here, the reason I do everything, that's Zuri Rain. And that's the Black woman that I got to protect until I don't have another breath in my body.
She's beautiful.
Thank you. Shout out to you, Ray. Thanks for having me on, brother. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Of course. Man, so all of y'all are doing y'all's work, man. We about to jump on libations because we got another show. Shout out to the AOS brothers, man, for coming through and linking up with us or whatever. We appreciate y'all. And thanks to everybody that joined us in the audience. If you like this, like it, share it, do whatever. But we about to jump back on for libations. Peace.
Bye.